Good morning, everyone. I'm here to represent my group. My group consists of four budding researchers, including me. And our research is about a world within a world, mapping the experiential architecture of nation-state simulation game for learning international relations and global politics. COVID-19 is a social health pandemic. It doesn't simply invade the body, it invades society. And that invasion creates lack of mobility for students and professors for the school. It creates the new system. We experience this in Southeast Asia, particularly in the Philippines, the new normal in education, where we now go towards digital learning. The onset of digital learning created a lot of issues, particularly with students adapting to this new situation. So this paper tries to look for new pathways to transcend new normal towards a better normal. Our research is interdisciplinary. It bridges education and the study of political science as a discipline. In terms of mobility, we also borrow the term transmobile when we speak of students and professors being able to link with each other through the digital space. The three interdisciplinary interfaces of this research, number one is the course being taught wherein the simulation is used. We use this in international relations and global politics class. And in the review of the literature, we have the following ideas from Wendt, from Waltz, to Wallerstein and Krasner, all of whom speak about the international world as anarchic, just like we are now. We are at the time of, we are not in a complete anarchy, but the government, the educational institutions are trying to adapt to the new normal. And according to Wendt, we have to identify the structure that's part of the reality of the anarchy. According to Waltz, in order to perceive the structure, we have to look at the system, not just at the individual units. For Wallerstein, we look at the international world as interconnected, particularly on economy. That's Wallerstein's idea. But we borrow from Wallerstein by looking at his idea, which focused on the structure of the world, aside from that of the process of, for example, the educational system or interactions of people. For Krasner, Krasner gave us an emphasis towards international organizations, not just states. He calls this regime theory, wherein order is created through institutions. What is the relevance of all this? These are topics that we discuss in international relations. The question is, how do international ideas now become transferred, become learned by students in an COVID-19 online learning environment? So we focused on NationStates, and it's an online simulation game. There is an existing discourse in education with regards to simulations, particularly one of the common simulations in international relations is the MUN, or Model United Nations. So if you're going to study relationship between states, the best simulation is the World Organization of Model United Nations. According to studies, Model United Nations provides us with an avenue to practice the theory. Though Zenok, Nishide, Saito, even Obendorf provides us that we should balance this particular mode of education so that we do not just focus on the fun of education, but also balance it with the outcomes of knowledge. This is related to the studies by Butler et al. And Baker and Cobb, which suggest that professors require planning in the use of simulations. That's why sometimes professors get turned off. They shy away from doing new simulations for class because it will take some time and preparation. But according to the advice and recommendations of these researchers, because of the studies that we do now, for example, this research that I conducted and even my peers here in this session, we provide our peers in the education sector and the future a particular set of frameworks for them to look at how do we now plan in using simulations. Padua and Smith said that there are deficits in using simulations. They also suggested, even Fenton and Gallant agreed, that there should be a balance between the simulation and the teacher. You cannot just leave the simulation, the learning, to the students and then assume that they would learn. It's still a balance between the simulation online learning game and the teacher. Aside from this, Barger and Eichelberg and Ngo iterates to us the importance, the use of simulation games because they provide us with mobility and inclusivity. We are right now at the time of the lack of mobility, the pandemic, the quarantine removes mobility, but the online games link students and teachers and students together, and it makes it more inclusive. Aside from this, we use in international relations the levels of analysis of system, state, and individual to help frame the mode of learning of students. And in terms of educational theory, we use Cobb's experiential learning, who framed for us feeling and doing, feeling and watching, thinking and watching, and thinking and doing in terms of experiential learning. Through experiential learning, a student is able to immerse into the knowledge that being taught to them, that they are supposed to learn, through the combination of those four: feeling, doing, watching, and thinking. So combining these elements, so we have educational theory from Cole, we have various international relations theories that need to be taught to the students. A part of the discourse, bridging international relations and education, is that international relations is quite theoretical. It's founded on theory. So a traditional professor, I love the lecture a while ago at the opening part of today's eLFA, wherein traditional professors were also discussed. And if a traditional professor teaches international relations, that professor will just focus on the theory without the practice. Another problem is that if we focus on so much on simulations, we might miss the knowledge. So there should be a balance between these two elements. For the method of data gathering, we try to map out the architecture of the game. The game is NationStates. It was created by Max Barry, the author of Jennifer Government, which is a satirical novel on politics. Our method was to enter the digital world by using a transect walk. Transect walk is a method usually used in community development. These are pictures that I have taken in previous researches of mine, wherein we mapped out institutions in provinces, in rural areas. And we did validation by asking community members to help us map out the components of that area. It is done by taking a walk, observing, and taking notes. And then we validate it through interviews. From this data, we were able to analyze them using thematic analysis by classifying interview data, which has already been transcribed, and categorizing them according to the levels of analysis in international relations, that's column B, and according to the components of experiential learning from code, that's column E. As part of ethical practice and research, we used code names for the students whom we interviewed, the students who actually played the game. From this data, from the analysis of this data, we were able to come up with what we now call the pyramid of experiential learning for international relations. And this pyramid contains 3 pathways. Those pathways are Discord servers, forums, and the common areas. So we have the students now, and they are able to enter the world of international relations through those areas. So those are the three black lines that form our pyramid. And they lead us down further into the roots of international relations. As shown by our diagram, we have the three levels: individual, the state, and international level. What consists these three experiences are the architecture of nation states as a game. So for example, in the individual level, we have dispatches, we have the regional message boards, we have fact books and issues. These are parts of the game, and from which the student gets to interact with other students, other players, and gets to experience being able to run his or her own state and interact with other states in such a way that they are like heads of states, ambassadors, presidents, prime ministers, interacting with other representative of states. So for the individual, these are the parts. What we highlighted as blue are areas that repeat in the other levels of analysis. The black ones are unique to that particular area. So for individual, the black ones, individual policy decision system is unique only to the individual level. For the state level, this is the level wherein you act as a representative of the state. For the individual, this is where the experience wherein you are a person within a state and you feel affected by the decisions of your rulers. And for the international level, this is the level wherein the state interacts with another state, just like in the United Nations or ASEAN or the European Union. As a better way to show the parts of nation states, we have screen captures of the game. For example, here we have the picture of what's going on at the General Assembly, the simulation version of the General Assembly of the United Nations inside the game. We have a banner which represents the state involved. We have dispatches wherein announcements are made about what's going on around the world right now. This is between regions so that you get to know what's going on with other regions right now. The region's message board allow students to interact with each other, to talk with each other about what should they vote about in the General Assembly or in the Security Council. And if you would look at the game, it doesn't look like the usual game wherein you have a lot of 3D, a lot of high-tech animations. This is an educational online game. It's more flat. It's not 3D, but when you enter it, it's in front of you. You're able to interact with other students representing states, and that interaction mimics, in a way, an international organization. We have other parts also. You get to communicate via Telegram. So when you create your own state using NationStates, you receive telegrams from other existing states asking you to join the region. You also have a DOS here, just like if you are trying to have intelligence, networks, or data about other states, that's the DOS. That's what the DOS here is about. We also have a picture of the Security Council here. And we have sample interviews of the experience of the students. So we have here a quote from an interview. This is translated. The interviews were conducted based on the comfort of the students being interviewed. So sometimes they answer in English, sometimes they answer in Filipino, and we translate it since we both speak Filipino and English. Thank you for the time reminder. So this quote from the interview shows to us the experience of a student, that the student did not simply identify his or her experience as international relations, but even identified that that experience led him to feel and analyze that that experience is a feature of international law. So IL is international law, which is a subdiscipline of international relations. In another interview, a student mentions thinking skills. So that's one of Kolb's elements in his framework, thinking. So here, we also have thinking and doing. We also have thinking here because within nation states as a game, you would notice here at the picture, you have notices, you have issues. Every day you receive around 5 issues and you decide on those issues. You read the possible discourses in your state. For example, in your nation, so this is a student who called his nation Azetian. In that student's nation, there's an issue, for example, about checks and balances or about the management of common areas. The decisions in the legislature will be announced through digital newspaper. So everyone gets to know that, and that will now impact on the political international status of that student's state. And other nations will get to know about what happened there. For our conclusions and recommendations, we found that in nation states, there's a balanced pathway of feeling, watching, thinking, and doing according to Kolb. There's also a balance of levels of analysis. A student gets to encounter this in nation states. In terms of international relations theory, students more often encounter liberalism and constructivism rather than realism and the other less common international relations theories. For our recommendations, we propose a quantitative research that can create or measure the indicators on how it affects the learning. And aside from this, we also support past literature that there should be balanced experience in the game, balance of outcomes from the game and the knowledge expected of students, and a balance of the game with the teacher. That teacher is a very important factor in simulation. In the Philippines, I would like to greet everyone. Maraming salamat po. Thank you very much.